we're asking any musician who wants to take part to just do a one-take video, just using your iPhone or whatever, of you doing a song. And then you'll send it in to us with your name and address and so forth. And then, oh, that was me. Sorry. I heard myself with some feedback. Sorry. And then what we'll do is we have it on our website, and it's crosstownarts.org/againstthegrain. And all those songs are on there, and there's virtual tip jars. And so Crosstown Arts will give you $50 to start out with for your video, and then anybody can tip. And 100% of the proceeds go to the musicians. Crosstown Arts takes none of that money. It all goes straight to the musicians, and we're paying out every 2 weeks. So I know a lot of people have had some really great success recently with doing Facebook Live concerts and that sort of thing. So this is just like one more thing. If you're interested, if you want to do it, just make a video and send it to us, and we'll put it up there. It's just another opportunity for, local musicians. And I know a lot of filmmakers also double as musicians. So just send us those videos. And we are saying, do this in your house by yourself. We're not encouraging bands, stay apart until it's all over. But that's all I have. Yeah. So crosstownarts.org/againstthegrain. And I hope this all ends soon and we see each other again in the theater. And that's it. Thank you.
All right.
Justin.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Crosstown Arts, again, for being our longtime partner in this program. We could not be doing this stuff without you guys, so thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Joseph Carr, the Director of Artist Development and Youth Film with Indie Memphis. Thank you all for joining us tonight. This is our first ever virtual Shoot and Splice event, so this is very much an experiment, so please let us know afterwards what worked, what didn't work. We'd be happy to hear from everybody about what they liked. Like Justin said, normally we host these live on the first Tuesday of every month at the Crosstown Theater. The world has obviously made other plans for everybody for now, but we're excited to go virtual and still bring our filmmaking community together. Before we get started, I want to thank our Shoot and Splice sponsors. That is Mark Jones, Firefly Grip and Electric, LensRentals.com, Music and Art Studio, and Via Productions. Those sponsors are also the in-kind sponsors of our Indie Grants. Indie Grants is our filmmaker grant program in which we provide cash and in-kind services to 3 different Memphis-based filmmakers to produce short films. We have one for narrative short film, one for documentary short, and new this year, which I'm really excited about, is our proof of concept grant, which is for filmmakers with a narrative feature film in development to produce a proof of concept short film that is based on said feature. So please visit indiememphis.org to learn more about those grants. We are also excited to provide you all with our brand new Indie Memphis Movie Club. Movie Club offers weekly virtual screening opportunities for brand new films and classics. Plus we have online Q&As and discussions on Tuesday evenings between our programmers and special guests. This past Tuesday, we hosted a discussion between our artistic director, Marion Bale, who's with us tonight, and New Yorker critic Richard Brody on the new Romanian crime thriller, The Whistlers. That conversation is still up for you to view at any time on our YouTube channel, as well as all past and future Movie Club discussions will be available there as well. Our next featured Q&A is the Italian crime drama, The Traitor. That's next Tuesday, the 14th. That film is available to rent at any time for another week for $10. Or if you're an Indie Memphis member, which hopefully most of our Memphis-based filmmakers are, you can use your credits to watch that film. Memberships are $50 a year, but you automatically get 5 ticket credits for any film in our movie club or in our physical cinema once we all get back up and out in the world. Also, we have Ken Loach's newest film, Sorry We Missed You. That is available until tomorrow, so get on that if you have not seen that yet. Okay, so how this evening will work is first, our hosts, our programming team will begin the conversation. And once the Q&A portion begins, we'll make sure everybody knows. And we ask that you raise your hand, use the raise your hand option at the bottom of your screen. I will call on you, which will open up your microphone to have you all ask questions directly to them. If you don't want to do that, you can also just submit your questions through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And yeah, we also have a chat option on the right. So if you want to chat amongst yourselves on the side, please do. Just keep it within the theme of the discussion, of course. Yeah, okay, at this time, I guess I'll hand it over to our Meet the Programmers programming team. We have Artistic Director, Marion Bale. We have our Senior Programmer, Miss Bridget Wheeler. And the newest member of our team, which we're so excited to have on board now, is Programmer Kayla Meyers. So we'll give it up for the three of them. Everybody give them a nice round of applause from home, please. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Joseph, and thanks, Justin. We're so excited to be doing this virtual shoot and slice. And before we begin, I also just want to give a quick shout out to, we have a very, very streamlined team at Indie Memphis and a streamlined programming team, but there are two people who are not here tonight, Madeline Wall and Dana Reynolds, who are associate programmers and are so important for what we do and for the conversations we have and for our vision. And I think Dana might be in there, so listening, so maybe we can bring her in later. So we'll begin just, we'll start just telling you about us. Well, before we begin, I just want to also say that programming, this is obviously this virtual shoot and splice is happening because we're in an unprecedented moment. And we'll be talking about how programming is for us normally, how it's been for the past years that we've been working at Indie Memphis and other festivals, but we'll also be talking about what's different about this year than any other year. And the truth is, no one has all the answers and no one knows quite. We were supposed to be opening up a new cinema tomorrow, and instead we're doing a virtual cinema, playing more films than we would have in a normal cinema. We are planning on having our festival is in October. It's October 21st to 26th, and that is in stone. Those dates are solid. We will not cancel the film festival. We will not move the film festival. What might happen though is if people can't travel, if who knows what will happen within the world of health and guidelines, but we'll be following those. So some portion of the festival might be online. If things are dire, all of the festival could be online. We don't have all the answers, but one thing that has always defined our programming is we are happy to try new things. We're happy to throw out the rules and just look at what's going on and try to offer what's really needed. And we'll be doing that. So in this conversation, we'd love to answer any questions you have. We know that festival strategy for filmmakers changes, but there are, because of what's happening now, but we want to let you know that we want to hear from you. We want to hear what your concerns are. And we can't pretend to know what will happen in the future, but we want to know what you're concerned about and just know in general that not only our festival, but all festivals are aware that it's a different world. So now we'll just talk a little bit more generally, and we'll get back to talking about that a little bit, and I'm sure it'll come up in questions, and we're really looking forward to hearing from you. My name is Marion Bale. I'm the artistic director at Indie Memphis and Indie Memphis Film Festival, and now Indie Memphis Cinema. And I have been at the festival. This is my third year. I came to the festival as a jury member under Brandon Harris when he was the senior programmer, and I was so impressed with the festival. I had heard a rumor that Indie Memphis, that there were two indie film festivals in America that had significant Black audiences, and I heard that they were Black Star and Indie Memphis, and I came to the festival and found that to be true, and which was incredibly refreshing compared to many of the other regional film festivals I've been to. And I loved Memphis, and I loved this team, the people, Joseph, who you just met, and Bridget, and when Brandon stepped down and the opportunity came to program, I was really happy to step in. And my background before that, I'm ancient, so I've had many lives, very ancient, and my first job when I was 18, when everyone else went to college, I ran away to Europe and worked in the music business for 2 years. I got a job as a teenage talent scout and started my life that way, and then went back to school, and after that worked at an art museum. And when I was working at the art museum, I started programming films about art and programming artist films, and really loved it. And it became a huge passion. So I went back to school to study filmmaking, and then became very, through doing that, I became very interested in film history. I really responded to my film history classes and the film, writing about film, and ended up moving to New York. I was in the Bay Area at the time. And I mean, honestly, I just moved to New York to see movies. But through doing that, I also showed movies. I got several jobs as a film critic. I started another phase of my life as a film critic, but what many people didn't know is that I started as a programmer. I was programming films at something we called movie night disco, and people liked my film descriptions, and that led to writing film criticism. And then I started a film festival along with a Memphian, Kentucker Oddly, the La Di Da Film Festival in New York. So I continued film programming while I was writing. I programmed mostly older films, mostly repertory films. I programmed at almost every venue in New York except for a film forum. But I very much would have loved to get a job doing that, but no job became available. And so I continued to write film criticism. And then at some point I really wanted to go back into film programming. And after running the film festival and writing, I started to learn more about new films. My natural bent is old films. And so as I started to travel to film festivals and learn more about film festivals, and develop my knowledge of contemporary films and meet a lot of filmmakers and work with a lot of filmmakers at my film festival, I got that knowledge. And then when this opportunity came, it was the right fit and the right time. And it's been really an amazing experience, because this is a great team. Everyone works absolutely their hardest and is so smart and creative. And so we're able to do new things. And so I'm really proud of what we've done at the film festival. And now I will introduce Bridget Wheeler, senior programmer, and someone who's been at Indie Memphis longer than all of us.
Yes. So as Miriam said, I'm senior programmer. I'm also director of operations for Indie Memphis Film Festival. I actually started with Indie Memphis, I think this is my 11th year now. And I've done a lot of things in 11 years. That has all led me to these two very specific roles. But a little background, I know a lot of you that are tuning in, you've heard this probably a million times, so I'll leave it brief so we can leave more time for you guys to get to know our newest member, Kayla. But I studied film when I was in college. And when I graduated, I kind of had that panic moment that, like, of all the production that I did throughout school, I didn't have that like natural attachment to. And I was lucky enough to have a friend and a mentor at the time who told me about this crazy world of film festivals. And 45 minutes down the road in Birmingham, because I went to the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, 45 minutes down the road was this festival called Sidewalk Film Festival. She's like, you should go check it out. And that's when I went, this was in okay, I'm not even going to say what year it was. It was a while ago. And I was a sophomore or junior in college, and I got to see Dig by Andi Timoner in this makeshift space in the middle of downtown Birmingham, which at the time was very different than what downtown Birmingham is now. And my mind was blown. Just that, there were people out there taking existing spaces and repurposing them for a community event to watch this film that I'd never heard of. I probably wouldn't have heard of at that time, to be able to watch this documentary. And like, it just really blew my mind at all the possibilities that then could lead to. So very quickly I started volunteering for them. That led to, after I graduated college, I volunteered for them 40 hours a week for almost an entire year. Don't necessarily recommend doing that. But obviously I'm going to say, volunteer for your local film festivals if you want to be involved. But that really is what opened all the doors for me to really allow me to explore this crazy, crazy world of film festivals, and meet incredible filmmakers and see even more incredible films. So that really, all of that, when I moved to Memphis, I didn't know about Indie Memphis right away. And luckily at the time, the executive director at the time sought me out at the Apple store where I was working, and was like, hey, so you've got experience at Sidewalk. I could really use your help at Indie Memphis if you're interested. So I started screening, and then I started hanging out more, and I started seeing areas of opportunity that, at most nonprofits, everybody is spread so thin with 8 million different roles and hats that I was like, well, I could help out in this area. I could do this or I could do that. And like I said, it all snowballed, and here I am 11 years later, back full time with Indie Memphis and loving every minute of it. And I just wanted to say one thing. I will remember, it's kind of like similar to what Kayla was going to say, when someone's the right fit for your team. And for someone like myself, who's been with Indie Memphis as long as I have, I'm obviously, I feel protective of it. I feel protective of the culture. I feel protective of where it's going, just because, you've been around so long and all these various iterations. And I'll never forget when Miriam and I had our first call. It was supposed to be 1 hour long, and 2.5 hours later, we realized it had been about 2.5 hours and that we needed to go ahead and wrap it up. And I just remember feeling like, she's Indie Memphis. Like, this is the perfect fit. And we'll get into some more of that when it comes to programming, but that will be very much a common theme throughout a lot of stuff we're talking about. So you've heard enough from me. And now I want to pass it over to our newest programmer, Kayla.
Hey y'all, I'm Kayla Meyers. So like Miriam mentioned, I'm from Memphis originally. I grew up in Memphis, went to school in Memphis, until I graduated in 2014 and went to the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri, where I got a degree in journalism and a degree in digital storytelling, which was kind of like a multidisciplinary kind of film degree where I shot and edited and wrote a lot of my own stuff, but then we watched a lot of things that were more like video art and non-narrative focused, and really kind of expanded my idea of what any kind of like film and filmmaking could be like. I thought I was kind of like a movie buff, but that kind of just like just blew my mind. And also going to school in Columbia meant that I got to attend the True False Film Festival for pretty much all the time that I was in college. And, for me, like, I didn't really know what a programmer was by my freshman year of college. Didn't really know like what a film festival was like until True False. That was the first experience that I had. And I think True False is really similar to Indie Memphis in the fact that it's so community based, and very much so in that like I felt like this was another home going to True False. And then I felt that way when I finally got to come to Indie Memphis. And so that really expanded my knowledge. And at the time, though, I wasn't interested in programming. I was very much like, I'm making films and I'm going to do that. But then going to True False allowed me to kind of meet Miriam and Bridget and talk to them about what Indie Memphis was like and what programming is like for them. And that for me was kind of like, oh, like my interest in, I always kind of thought film was interesting in sort of a, what can it do for the community, and also kind of like a more academic kind of look at things. That was always what I was really more interested in. And I think talking to Marion and Bridget about Indie Memphis was like finally having an option of like marrying those two things for me, very much being interested in like the practical sense of filmmaking, but also sort of these heavier cultural community-based things. And so I got to, this is my second year with Indie Memphis, although it feels like it's been so much longer, that I'm getting the chance to work with Miriam and Bridget. And so programming for me, I'm much newer to all of this and just really excited that I get the chance to do it with a team like the one that we have here. And also just that Memphis is my home. This is the place that I grew up. And kind of like Bridget said, she's very protective of Indie Memphis. Like I feel very protective of Memphis and just the South, like as a region. And so I'm really honored and excited that I get to work on this team and be here tonight. And yeah.
Thank you. I learned a lot just hearing you two talk. I want to say, you know, that's preemptively address some questions you might have. One thing that I was looking for in putting together, I was lucky enough to be hired in this role and then was able to help form the team with Dana and Maddie and Kayla. And one thing that attracted me to, also, you may have noticed we have an all women programming team. Yay. We love that. We think that's perfectly fine. I think it balances some of the more male leaning programming teams and the rest of the country and world. So, and it's very interesting because we're an all women programming team. We don't feel as much need to count our numbers. We feel like we're naturally interested in women filmmakers, but even more than that, we all have just a sense of a film is sexist or makes us uncomfortable in some way. And I think that works for us. I think it's perfectly fine for people to count their numbers, and but we have decided to just have all women programmers and to go with our instinct and go with what works and what we personally respond to. But a thing that I was really interested in Kayla and Maddie and Dana is the breadth of their knowledge. They all know, Kayla, for instance, knows about documentary. There's no better film documentary education than the True False Film Festival. And also Mizzou, the journalism department where you're at, is great. But we love True False. That's our older brother film festival, older sister, I don't know, maybe older brother. And it's we are so inspired. Shout out to Amir and Chris and Janelle and David and Abby, Paul too. Hi, Paul. You're probably not watching, but I didn't want to forget you. They have been a real inspiration. Meeting David and coming to True False was being inspiration for the La Di Da Film Festival that I mentioned that I ran. And they're very community-based, very specific, very intellectual, and open, very accessible as well as intellectual. And so Kayla had just this great knowledge of documentary, this knowledge of art films and older films. And that's something with Kayla, with Dana and with Maddie, their knowledge is just so broad and so deep. And they know about films that not everybody knows about, like that are not part of the typical dude canon, that are outside of that we're always looking for. And they also are very knowledgeable about older films. And we do have a strong retrospective at the festival. I'd like to have more. When we open the cinema, we'll have more retrospective, more classic films. And even more than playing classic films, I think in looking at programmers, and to be honest, also filmmakers, if they show a knowledge and interest in film history, that's a good sign. That's a good sign that they care about the form. That's a good sign that they care about, that they're curious. The most important quality in a film programmer is just constantly seeking new stuff and constantly expanding your knowledge. And I think also when people are interested in older films, that shows a willingness to be humble to the film history, and to understand that we're just one dot in it, one point in it, and that's incredibly, I think, important. So yeah, we love this team, and we're looking forward to doing more. To tell you a little bit more about, well, let's talk a little bit more, going back to the idea of filmmaking in coronavirus era. I just wanted to let everyone know that we also were one of the film festivals to sign the Seed and Spark pledge. There's a pledge that there have been some articles about of film festivals and also distributors who have signed a pledge that we're going to make it easy. We understand the challenges, and we're not going to punish anyone for screening online. I will say there have been a lot of questions. I think right now we're all figuring it out. But one thing to know is that films that are, there's at this point a real interest in differentiating films that have a virtual festival life versus streaming. If a film plays a festival virtually, that does not count as a streaming distribution. So keep that in mind. And then Bridget, do you want to talk a little bit more about the Seed and Spark pledge and why we signed it, and just summarize it?
Yeah, so I'm gonna leave it really brief because we want to make sure we've got enough time to talk about, some other things, but I do want to encourage all of you to seek out the Seed and Spark pledge. It is based, and I'm gonna look at my cheat sheet. I do apologize, but it is based around like, as they put it, 6 specific rule tweaks when it comes to screening at film festivals. Essentially what all of this is for is a way for distributors and film festivals to come together in order to best support the filmmaker. So really this is about you as the filmmaker at the end of the day to figure out the best way in unprecedented circumstances, how we can best and or better support you. And again, we're all still trying to figure it out. But thanks to our friends at Seed and Spark, they did put this together. And here were the 6 rule tweaks are around these specific areas. Again, we want to encourage you to read more specifically about this at Seed and Spark. So those are online eligibility, premiere status, geo-blocking waivers, production timeline, commitment timeline, and a distributor clause. So those tweaks, like I said, are around those specific areas, 6 specific areas. You can also go to Film Freeway. They do have a list, and I think it's been updated. We should be on there now. All the festivals that have signed the Seed and Spark pledge. So after you read more about it and you're wanting to see which festivals have committed to this, that's a great place to start, is by going to that list that Film Freeway has posted on their website.
And now we'll talk a little bit just about the sort of logistics, the nitty gritty. So for programming, there are 5 of us who are programming, and our big tool is Film Freeway. If you would like to submit your film, please submit to us on Film Freeway. Our next deadline is the 15th. In a week, and that is the regular deadline. So you can still apply after that, but then it becomes more expensive. And so please do submit. The last time, the final deadline is July, is early July. So you still have some time if you're working on something, but please submit. Bridget has pointed out, do your bio, do your director's statement. Those things are important. We look at those things. Those are very important. And then we have
every single word. So if it's not there, it makes us go,
It's very helpful, because obviously when we're putting together a festival, we're looking for diversity, and that's not only diversity in gender and in having and sexuality and race and disability, but it's also just diversity in content and style and It's like putting a meal together. You wouldn't have a meal that's all the same temperature, the same color, the same anything, the same texture. You want to have a variety. And so that's always, as a programmer, what you're looking for. And so it's hard to say what we're looking for exactly, but we want to know, and that has to do with what the film is and who it is, but also what it looks like, the style. We're a film that we really are open to films that are a little more experimental, a little more, I would say, we're not looking for technical proficiency. We'd much rather have something be really an original vision, and maybe it's a little rough. That's okay for us. We appreciate that more. We're not something where it's a mini Hollywood. We're very much, indie is in our name, and that's part of what we're really is important to us, like an independent spirit in the way that it's made, in the style. So when you submit your film, you put in the category, and I want to highlight, we have, there's narrative, there's a documentary, but we also have a couple of categories that other festivals don't. One of our categories is sounds. We're in Memphis, so music films are incredibly important. And something you should know about sounds is that it tends to be mainly music documentaries, and that's really important to us. We're always discovering, and we've done many world premieres of new music documentaries. That's incredibly important to Memphis and to the festival. But we also do narrative music films, so keep that in mind. And if you do have a music documentary, it's much better. Please apply in sounds, not in documentary. And then we also have
shorts, real quick. And for shorts, it's just, there's a documentary short music category and a narrative short music category. So everything Miriam is saying holds true also for shorts.
Great. And then we have another category in both shorts and features called departures. And the question that we're always asking ourselves, and other people are asking us, is what is departures? And that's a great question. What is departures? And departures is our experimental category, but it's also our hybrid category. The way to describe departures is it's films that are in between, and that can be in between genres, in between narrative and documentary, so a sort of hybrid film, or in between experimental and narrative. And I love those films. That was something that I emphasized at La Di Da too. Those films that are a little too narrative for experimental film festivals and a little too experimental for narrative film festivals, we love them. Send them to us, please, please, please. And then also in between can mean in between lengths. If you have a film that's 45, 50 minutes, departures is for you. Please send it in departures. And then, so that's an important category to the festival. Music and more experimental or between experimental and narratives is hugely important. And then once you submit your film to Film Freeway, the next step is it's looked at by screeners. And we have a screening committee, and we are looking for more people on the screening committee. So if you would like to be on our screening committee, please write to programming@indiememphis.com and put screeners or screening committee on the title. We'll be tweeting out, posting on social how to apply to be on the screening committee. It's really, it's really fun. I'm so grateful to the people who've been on our screening committee. We obviously can't watch every single film, but it's watched by our screening committee, and I and Bridget, we read every single comment and we follow up on that. And some of the comments are, I remember one film that we played last year, which was one of my favorite films in the festival, Empty Metal. And I think the screener comment was like, what the fuck? I've never seen anything like that. And immediately I was like, okay, I need to see this film. And it became a film that was just, it won the award, it won Best Departures. It was, one of our programmers said it was her favorite film that we've had last year. And so those comments are really important, and we would love you to be part of that team. Bridget, do you want to talk about your process and working with the screening committee?
Yeah, absolutely. And Kayla, jump in at any point on this. So with the shorts, again, I am always looking for tons of help when it comes to the screening committee for shorts. Because I also handle all the hometowner submission categories, so for the national categories, I'm always looking for help, another set of eyes. But I think it's really important to stress here when it comes to submitting to the festival is that for shorts, I can guarantee, even though there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, because I have an amazing screening committee and I have someone as amazing, a programmer as amazing as Kayla, I can guarantee 2 sets of eyes on every film that's submitted. So you can be assured that every film will go through a process that either one programmer will watch it, either myself or Kayla, or at least 2 other people will watch your film. And, I guess now is an important thing to mention too for Vimeo stats, that it is important that our screening committee they're from all over. Sometimes we've got screening committee members that are located internationally. So don't always go by your Vimeo stats as whether or not I don't see anybody in Memphis having screened this. That's not going to be the case, because that's just kind of like our integrity, like one of our base rules, kind of like our price of admission in terms of that. So that you can rest assured that your film will be seen. As far as that process goes, and then from there, I mean, it's just like you just slowly start chipping away, and sometimes it seems like a really, really slow process. And but Kayla can attest to especially last year, and thank God, Kayla agreed to come on board last year. But I mean, up until the very last minute, Kayla and I were watching and rewatching films that we had seen 5-6 times already at that point. And sometimes it's just a matter of watching and rewatching until you feel like you've got the right flow or the right combination of films or the right, varied perspectives and filmmakers and stories. I mean, it's all of it. And boy, I mean, last year, Kayla, we threw away the blocks that we had and basically started from scratch, maybe 24 hours before. And it's a lot of that. And it's just a lot of trial and error and a lot of, man, I wish I had 5 more days of the festival or 10 more blocks to, 10 more blocks of 90 minutes to fit all of these incredible films into. I assure you it's not an easy process, but, it's just, you just got to keep watching and watching until you feel like you've got it right or as close to right as possible. That you feel like your audience is going to walk away feeling challenged or learning something new or, igniting new conversations, inspiration. And something that Kayla and I talk a lot about too is, we want the audience to walk out of those shorts blocks going, either they absolutely loved a film or hated a film. Like, I don't want anyone walking out just feeling like, okay, like that was fine. That's not how we want to program. Now, obviously, sometimes we're going to get it like that, and that's okay. But that's when we hope that like you will find any one of the programmers and like have that conversation with. We love having those dialogues, especially right on the spot. Because I guarantee you every single film that's programmed, we feel very passionate about for one or a million reasons. So we will have no shortage of talking points. So approach us if you dare. But yeah.
I want to ask Kayla, I realize, gosh, the time is flying, and I want to open it up to questions. If you have questions, you can type them in the Q&A box if they're occurring to you right now. And then soon when we open up the questions, you can also raise your hand. We'd love for you to join in. So feel free to join in and raise your hand, but also feel free to just use the Q&A box. So when it comes time to actually choosing a film and saying yes or no, and looking for, we know it when we see it, what is an indie Memphis film? We had a group meeting before and we're trying to identify it. And we decided it was kind of like that definition of pornography. Like, it when you see it. And it's something that is original and surprising and has a specific POV, One thing that you should know about us is that who directed it is really important to us. We really are not necessarily a representation matters film festival. We don't just care who's on the screen. We want to know who's making the film. And that's very important to us. And Kayla, I'll ask you, what are you looking for when you want to say yes? Like what makes you drawn to saying yes to a film?
What a question. I think it's something that we talked about when we had our first meeting is what I'm watching something that like feels like it really has perspective and a point of view. Bridget has already kind of talked about like how if something's imperfect, but if it's like imperfect, but it has this thing that made me like, like, wow, I hadn't thought about filming something in that fashion before, or hadn't thought about presenting this thing in this way before. I think that's what always really struck me, especially with shorts, because if you can tell a really effective story, whether that's in 6 to 10 minutes or in 10 to 15 minutes, especially when you're watching so many of them, like to have those moments and have those shorts that you come back to, I think that's often what kind of like made me stop and say like, Bridget, like I love this short, like I'm gonna fight for this short, or it was amazing when Bridget and I would agree about something, like we know that this thing maybe like could be better in a different way or could be better more technically, but it had something that we either wanted audiences in Memphis to see or that we just felt like needed to be seen regardless of whatever things you maybe like another festival may feel differently about it. So that's what really strikes me.
Let me unmute myself. I also, I want to open it up to questions very shortly because we want to be aware of your time. But I also want to, well, I'll just say my summary. There's so much we could say about the selection process, but for the screeners, what we're looking for, what our guideline is, and what I always say to the screeners is we're looking for films that are challenging, and that film can be formally challenging, it can be politically challenging, it can be emotionally challenging, and of course it can be intellectually challenging. I think the emotionally challenging is the sweet spot. That's a film, like those are, especially in narrative, we're always looking for films that are really truly almost uncomfortable, and we love those films that are challenging. I'm going to open it up to questions and bring Joseph back, but before I do, I want to let everyone know we have our deadline for submissions next week. We also have a deadline coming up this Sunday for our Black filmmaker screenwriting residency and fellowship. And this is an amazing new program. It comes with a cash grant and time in Memphis if you're not from Memphis for the residency, or a significant cash grant and mentorship if you're from Memphis, and that's for the fellowship. Last year, the final winners were chosen by Barry Jenkins, and there are Raven Jackson and Jamie Hatley. Watch those names, they'll be doing amazing things in the future, chosen by Barry Jenkins. And this year the winners will be chosen by Boots Riley, another friend of the festival. So please, what are you doing right now? You're at home, work on your screenplays, get it together. You have a few days, submit it by Sunday midnight. There is no application fee. There are a lot of other screenwriting residents that have $50 application fees. We have no application fee, and it's for Black filmmakers in America, and that's something that is a big priority at Indie Memphis. So at this point, we'll bring Joseph back, and we want to hear from you. Please let us know what your questions are.
Hey, everybody. So looking at our Q&A box here, we are encouraging everyone, if you have a question, please use the raise your hand button and we will unmute you and you can ask your question directly. But if you would like to use the Q&A box, as many of you have, feel free to do so. The first question we have is from Kyle. He asks, as a programmer, how does your knowledge of a filmmaker's previous work and how much you may or may not be a fan of their work play into your decision? In other words, how do you actively work to fight against biases, good or bad, you may have towards a filmmaker and or their work? Good question, Kyle. Miriam, everyone's muted, so feel free to unmute yourselves.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's
It's also a hard question.
It's a hard question. I will say that, you know, I'll answer the question in the reverse. We are like, I'll inverse the question. We have, you know, once you've come to the festival, once your film has been in the festival, we're a really small selective film festival. We're probably getting more selective. Even while we'll have stuff online, probably will be more focused. So when you get accepted in Indie Memphis, you become part of the family. And so, but that doesn't mean that we'll accept every film. Yeah. And that's hard. That is one of the hardest things we do. And we might have a bias towards a filmmaker. We might really want to have, but if the film doesn't fit, if it's just not the right film, not the right year, you know, the sort of themes change of the year too, and the balance of things, and not everything can be the right fit. So I think, so we're always looking for what is the right film and what is the right balance. A lot of times people will be disappointed and it's just not the right year, and we might love a film but it doesn't quite work. Or and then in the reverse, like I could have a genre balance, or some, you know, I could not like a certain genre or a certain style of film. But what we're always looking for is just if something can be surprising and engaging. And that's always the number one thing. If it holds our interests and it's and it's not like something we've seen before. So I think that goes beyond, I think we're always just, we're looking for what's in front of our eyes.
Yeah. I mean, I know for me, it's something that I have to remember a lot, especially when it comes to hometowner programming. I think it's so, so important, obviously, that I am constantly checking myself and holding myself accountable, having been in this community for 11 years and being rather familiar with so many of our filmmakers and their work, that's why I don't program that by myself. I have my own committee dedicated, you know, along with Kayla, to focus solely on hometowner programming. And so, you know, and that can work good and bad in terms of like my bias. Like sometimes, like, you know, I have a filmmaker that may not have been the nicest or most respectful to me in the past. That doesn't mean that they don't make a film that is very indie Memphis and deserves to be programmed. But that's why I don't do it by myself. And I think that anybody can have those personal biases creep in, but it is so important that you have a structure set up around that to prevent anything from any sort of biases. Because I'll tell you what, you know, it doesn't do me any good at all whatsoever to program with bias. It doesn't do me any good. You know, so much of my purpose is dedicated to the betterment of the Memphis filmmaking community. So that would be in direct conflict with that. So I would just be working against myself. So I think it's just really important that, you know, there are lots of times, like in Miriam, Kayla, Joseph, they can all speak to this, where I'll send a film, whether it's a hometowner or it's not, just someone like, you know, I've known or I've programmed their work previously. And I'm like, oh God, this one's just not hitting the mark for me. But like, I'm too familiar with this filmmaker and their work. Can you guys watch it for me? And kind of take my spot as, you know, take my spot or my set of eyes to watch it. So that is something that we do all the time. Miriam, you've sent me films, you've sent Kayla films. There's a lot of that back and forth to prevent any sort of biases or anything like that from creeping in, good or bad. So, because there's a lot of filmmakers out there that I love. I'm like, I wish I could program your work every year, but unfortunately, you know, to Miriam's point, that's just not something that's feasible. So
that's so important too, that we have systems for it. Like, that's the thing, is it could be, if there's a filmmaker that I feel too close to, I'll definitely send it to another screener. If there's a filmmaker that's like has a connection to Memphis in different ways, I'll also make sure to send it to a screener who's unbiased. Like, those are, nobody's automatically in. We have those systems in place. We also have systems, this is not the question, but if a film feels like it's a little bit out of our experience, like if a film is dealing with something that, we have a lot of women and women of color in our screening committee, but if a film is like dealing with something that I don't have knowledge of, whether it's disability or trans issues, we'll send it. Make sure to have people on the screening committee who have lived experience with those things. So we'll always make sure to get second opinions on those things.
Great. So Jessica would like to know, can you talk a little more about how the length of a film can affect whether it ends up being programmed in a block or at all? Does a good shorter film trump a great, if slightly long film? It's a big question, Bridget.
Well, that's a big question. So I guess kind of the way that I put it, and I also want to hear from Kayla on this one too, because we did have a number of films last year that were longer, that were so great, that did make it very challenging to program with the other films that we want to program as well. So I personally want to hear Kayla's take on this as well. But what I tell my hometowners, what I tell my Memphis filmmakers is that if you have a film that is, my sweet spot is like 12 minutes and under, right? If it is, because we have the cutoff at 25 minutes. And if you're submitting to me a 20 to 25 minute long film, I want to know that if you're submitting that to me, and that's like that, it's picture lock, everything, and you can't take out another, shave off another second, then I need to know that every minute in that 25 minutes, when I can program possibly 3 to 6 other films, that every single minute is so worth it, so necessary, and so crucial to your storyline and to your film, that it deserves that spot over 3 to 6 other excellent films that are shorter in length. Because so much of what we want to do is, programming, primarily focusing on the short films. I want to program as many films as I can, right? But I'm not going to just program numbers for the sake of numbers, right? I want to program the best of, but also show as many different works as I can from all over. So it is that fine balance. So it's just when you submit a film and if you're like, okay, it's 25 minutes and it deserves every single minute, then what you're telling me is that it is so great. Every single second of it is so great that, again, it deserves a spot over 3 to 6 other of your peers.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I feel like the 12 minutes and under is such a wonderful sweet spot. And I think that kind of goes along with kind of what Bridget was talking about earlier, where if you include like a lot of those materials when you submit in Film Freeway, like having a better understanding of like what you were inspired by. So if you submit like a director's statement, or you link a website that's like fully fleshed out about your film and about you, that kind of helps with those kind of decisions. But like Bridget and I had a lot of conversations where like we had a block, I'm thinking of like the Best Friends Forever block at the festival last year, we had to just keep moving things around and then figuring out what would work best for the festival and then what would maybe work for another point in the year. So like that's another thing that comes into consideration, where it may work, it may be perfect for the festival, but it also may be perfect for another point in the year for like Bridget's micro cinema kind of stuff. So really consider that, like Film Freeway, all those options that you have to really fill out that information. I love reading everything, so I will read every single thing that you submit. So really take that into consideration as well.
And just some numbers from last year, what we have over 280 films last year, and 207 were short films, and 52% of those short films were dedicated to Memphis hometowner programming. So just keep that in mind for anybody who's not a Memphis hometowner. You know, when you look at the whole pie, how, you know, it gets a little bit smaller and smaller. So kind of do the math from there.
Joseph, can I do a quick lightning round? There was a small question I tried to answer live and messed up. I just wanted to say that, yes, there is a departures short. Someone asked that. There's a departures feature as well as departures shorts. And those films can be also kind of a hybrid, a little experimental. So yes, in answer to that. And someone wanted to know if there are two directors, you still do one statement. You can combine your statement and that should be your shared vision. But also a little bit of about you, both of you. And there was also a question, if you have an incomplete treatment, can you still apply to the residency? We're not asking for a full script. We're just asking for the first, I think, 5 or 6 pages of the script. And the treatment, you should have a clear idea of what the film looks like. You can change it. It's not set in stone, but you should have some vision. We don't want you to come if you just aren't even, if you're still in the beginning phases and you're just, it's not quite there. We want to make sure that you at least have an idea, you're far enough along that you can complete the script this year. So, but it's not set in stone. Obviously, when you come to Memphis to write it, you can change it. So thank you for those questions.
Yeah, real quick on the departure shorts, that can be the animated short category, animated, experimental, narrative, documentary. You can submit them in any of the shorts categories because a lot of times we'll make those decisions on the back end because we don't necessarily have like a specific departure shorts category because it can kind of fit a lot of different things. So just know that primarily we've just got them broken out a little bit more specifically.
Great, thank you. Brandy asks, what happens when only a few spots are left? How hard do you all fight / go to bat for the films you really want? And does it come down to a vote with other Indie Memphis staff or just the 3 of you?
Real quick, want to give a shout out to Brandy. She was one of our venue managers, assistant venue managers at Playhouse on the Square. So thank you, Brandy. Oh, how hard is it? Well, for shorts, geez, Kayla, did we fight to the death on anything last year? Sometimes we arm wrestle, thumb wrestle, I don't know.
We lovingly arm wrestled. I'm just kidding. I don't think we have ever had to fight, but I think it's very much like feeling comfortable in communication with each other to feel comfortable enough to share honestly how you feel about something. Because like there's some stuff that Bridget may have really liked that I didn't like as much, or stuff that I really liked that Bridget didn't like as much. Like there are some genres that just we as people just enjoy more than others. And so I think it's just we had an open and honest conversation, and like Bridget in terms of like seniority, like ultimately like has more like we trust each other in our opinions, but she ultimately like gets to decide kind of what do those blocks end up looking like. And then coming to me if she needs like a second or third opinion on, is this good? Is this what this should look like?
Yeah, a lot of times too, we'll pull in different screeners, like really strong screeners, and saying, hey, you haven't seen this. Would you mind watching this for Kayla and I? To kind of have like a tiebreaker, so to say. Or something just doesn't seem right. We pull in someone who's like the complete opposite of what the film is targeted to. So it just really depends. And it's like, and it really comes down to, I will say, again, another amazing thing about, you know, having someone as amazing as Kayla last year is like when it gets down to the very end, anytime I made a change, or I mean, we made a change or I made a change, I would still run it back through Kayla again. So no decision was a surprise, or, you know, it's just that you just need to have that accountability. You need to have that second set of eyes, and you need that validation that like what you're putting forward and what you're putting out there, that both of you stand behind, because we're both programmers. You know, I might be the senior programmer, but we still very much program the shorts together. And it's really important that both of us feel confident about it. And if we don't feel confident about something, if, you know, if she's like, I love it for these reasons and I really want this in, well, then damn it, it's going to be in the festival and we're going to figure out where to make it work. Just because there is that trust in programming and taste.
With features, I'm working with Dana and Maddie, and ultimately the decision comes to me, but I'm asking them all around, and really it's just, there's always going to be disappointments. Like there's always like favorites that I have that up until the last minute, I'm like, can I make this work? Oh, is it this or this? And there's always like the really hard rejection letters to write that you really wanted them to work. And those decisions are really hard. But like I said before, it's based on the festival, it's based on the balance, what other things we have in there. And one thing that's great with both shorts and with features is we can also program it in the year round. So I think once we open the cinema, we'll have even more room. We just opened a new virtual platform, our own virtual platform. So we'll also be continuing to use that. There was a question if we'll be doing more virtual programming, and that'll be true whether or not that we're in a lockdown at the time of the festival. We've really enjoyed doing that. It opens up the world to play some of those films that didn't quite make it in the festival and get them to a wider audience. So yeah, there are always heartbreaks. It's just part of the process.
I feel like I break my heart the most every year.
Mackenzie would like to know, something that I've always loved about Indie Memphis is that you manage to keep it all relatable for folks who are not film/art house people. How do you pick successful films to present?
Also, shout out to Mackenzie. She was another one of our venue managers last year. So thank you very much, Mackenzie.
Oh, that's a really great question. That was what we were talking about, what we admire about True Falls, is that it's accessible at the same time as intellectual. Yeah, I mean, I think it just comes down to what we said before. We're looking for films that are engaging and surprising and that hold interest and that are and that fall between the cracks of other things and that are not necessarily that are that are fun. We're always looking for films that are fun. We're looking for comedies. We love comedies. We would love to play more comedies. So, that's part of what we're looking for too. So that's I love that question and I love that comment. Thank you.
Yeah, there is always that mix too of like, you, like you said, you want those like really funny films. You want the films that will pull people in, but then, there's a very specific feature last year that I'm not going to say, which film it was, but there was this feature film that both Miriam and I were like, okay, we like it, but how will our audience like what will it do for the audience? Because it wasn't one of those films that was like way out there or too super crazy, but like it pushed it just enough that like we kind of came to the decision together that like it's one of those films that like if some of our regular audience members stumbled into it, it pushes them enough in a very comfortable way to get them ready for some even more of our kind of crazier programming, I guess you could say. It kind of pushed the needle a little bit in terms of their comfortability, in terms of length, in terms of like, it was a little bit wild of a story, but again, like it wasn't so far out there that like we're really asking a lot of the audience to trust us on this film, right? So I think it's just like, it's one of those that you make those like in between decisions to continue to push kind of where your immediate audience is at, to kind of prepare them for some other films.
This was not a film in competition, if you're wondering if it was your film. It
No,
was
yes.
the filmmaker who was there. So
yes. It was a great film.
Tony asks, when deciding on retrospectives for the festival, how do you narrow your focus given the amount of material that's out there?
That's a good question.
That's a great question. There's so much with retrospectives. Unfortunately, we don't have time to do or room to do complete retrospectives. Again, when the cinema opens, we'll be able to do a lot more. But one thing that we've made a focus, and it doesn't yet have quite a title of what this focus is, but when I first came to the festival, they did a mini retrospective of Abel Ferrara. And then the following, and we decided to keep doing this indie hero retrospective of filmmakers who are just so important to independent film. And Abel Ferrara is an independent festival. He's an independent king. And then the next year we did Hong Sang-soo, another independent king. And then this last year we did Sarah Driver, who we did a full retrospective of her films. We were able to because she only has 4 or 5 films. So we were able to do a full retrospective of her films. But she is also, and these are filmmakers who are just so important. We are often looking for films that we hope will inspire filmmakers, Memphis filmmakers and visiting filmmakers. And I think that's true of Sarah Driver's films. So we often also will let filmmakers choose favorite films. So we had Amy Seimetz play, oh my God, what did Amy Seimetz play? She played, I'm gonna come right back to that. What?
What was it? Wendy? No. What is that film? Wendy?
It was the Emily.
Ryan.
Oh gosh, it's a woman's
No, it's one of my favorite films, and I just went blank on the name. Don't worry, I'll come right back. This is so
Ryan,
embarrassing.
in the chat.
The Barbara Loden film.
Wanda.
What's
Wanda.
Thank you, not Wendy. That was a complete brain melt. How embarrassing. But that was, yeah. So she played Wanda, hugely important independent film, hugely important filmmaker. We had Buzzarelli presented Brazil. So it's hard. If I could play all my favorite films, I would love to, but we try to find a focus. And so far we've been focusing, it's a filmmaker focus. So on films that have inspired or will inspire filmmakers. But thanks for that great question.
Katina asks, are there any opportunities for more art-based projects this year, like projection mapping?
That's an amazing question. And I will say we would like to say yes. It's hard to know yet exactly what it'll look like, but it's something that we would love to do more of. So I'll say that that's something that we'd love to explore more. And I'm not quite certain what even the venues with the landscape will look like for the festival this year. So it's too soon for me to say exactly, but we're very interested in that.
Also, hi Katina. That was my digital storytelling professor at Mizzou. So thanks for tuning in.
Awesome. Another one of our friends, Mr. Princeton James, is asking, first, he thinks that we all do a remarkable job at programming and pushing our indie market in a progressive way. Thank you, Princeton.
Thanks, Princeton.
He asks, what advice would you give to filmmakers creating a web series? Submit the pilot as a short film, maybe?
Yeah, so yeah, I guess it really depends on, I think it's got to be a case by case. I have in the past programmed the first episode of a web series, but that was part of Micro Cinema, part of my yearly partnership with Film Fatales. And I programmed this young woman's first episode because it was a standalone piece, essentially. The way that it played is that it could play by itself. And as of right now, we don't necessarily have any category that could play something like that could play any sort of episodic content, but that doesn't mean that we can't, if there's something that, there is an episodic that we think is really great after watching, submit the first episode. If it is something that's really great, Miriam and I, like she said in the beginning, like we've thrown out the rules before and just done something totally different than what we've been used to doing year after year. So that's not a question that I'm willing to like say definitely not. It's just I would submit the first episode, and then especially, you know, and after that we kind of go from there. You know, I would love to be able to have a section where we accept episodic. We're not quite there yet in terms of like kind of the structure of our festival and kind of what we're looking for. But again, that doesn't mean that that won't change. Especially since you're a hometowner, you submit for free. So it certainly doesn't hurt. But, you know, there's also other shorts programming opportunities as well. You know, I've got micro cinema that I do every month that hopefully we'll pick back up soon and do virtually. But I'm always looking for other ways, especially with the cinema hopefully coming in the, you know, sometime later this year. You know, Miriam and I have already had, you know, lengthy discussions on what it looks like for shorts at the cinema as well. So always submit it. I will never give you a definitive answer on that. And it's just going to always be a case by case.
Feel free to reach out for us too. You can reach out to info@indiememphis.com or the programming at indiememphis.com. And we're happy before you submit. We're always open to, right now there's not a TV or web series category, but it's something that we're, like Bridget just said, we're willing to do new things.
Yeah. We like to throw away rules.
All right, Camille would like to know, are cover letters required to submit your film to the Indie Memphis Film Festival?
Ooh, I want to take this. No, they're not, but it's like a loose requirement. Let's just say that's like a loose requirement. And we're not going to like penalize you for not filling it out, but I will make a mental note if you don't. Because it is so important what Miriam had touched on earlier. We want to get to know you as much as we can through your submission page. That is your opportunity to really sell yourself, who you are as a filmmaker, and then your film should then speak for itself, right? But I want to get a full picture when I have like this much space and then like these many submissions when it comes to shorts. I want the full package. I want to get to know you as a whole, or the best that I can. And you know, I know Kayla will say the same thing, because we had multiple conversations on film submissions last year that didn't leave a bio, didn't fill out a cover letter, really haphazardly filled out the film submission page. And I got to tell you, anything that you don't fill out, so this isn't necessarily just specific to the cover letter, but anything that you're not taking the time to fill out, I will tell you how I perceive it. If you aren't taking the time to provide this information, then you are then giving, say it's only 50% filled out. You're then asking me to then give you 15 minutes to watch your film when you wouldn't give me an extra 5 to fill out information that as a filmmaker, you should have populated elsewhere that you just copy and paste into your film submission page. So it's kind of like that give and take. You know, I need this information. I simply ask for this information. So it's like, just give me that. So then, you know, my team or myself can give you that time in return and feel confident about it, watching your film, getting to know you. So yeah, it's just kind of like, I really want that. And I really, really appreciate it.
I will say it depends on the programmer too, because I mean, well, first of all, to clarify, there's no, like, you don't have to send an email cover letter when you submit or something, but there is places to put your bio and about the film. And those vary in length from nothing to a long. I will say that the part that I'm looking for, especially, is the bio. What I want to look for is someone's like, what's your connection to this material? Like, what's your connection? And that's really important for me.
Yeah, I think the bio and the connection piece is also really important for me. But also, if you decide to include some of that other stuff, like making sure that you've proofread, and that your links that you attach are like actually active and work. That's another big thing. Like sometimes you may attach a website link and it doesn't actually go to like what's beneficial for your film. But really proofread, because especially if you're copying and pasting, like I know that it's much faster, but sometimes it's like, if you're mentioning a specific film festival and what you're sending, you want to make sure you're putting Indie Memphis and not some other festival that you're applying to.
Yes. No blind carbon copy mail merge emails.
Molly has 2 questions. Does it matter when a filmmaker submits their film? Do films submitted early get forgotten about versus films submitted later in the process? And also, how long should the film description be on Film Freeway?
I don't think for shorts, it doesn't matter when you submit it. Everything will get watched regardless. And then as long as for the film description, I think there's actually a place where you can put a log line and then a longer description. So I would provide both because it does become easier later on down the road, especially for shorts, or specifically for shorts. If you already have your log line to your short description and your long description, and there is a box for both in the submission process. So it's just easier to provide all that information up front. Should you get programmed. So Joseph doesn't have to hunt you down later collecting that information. But a quick snippet of information, like a quick snippet of info about your film, and then a longer one, I think you should always provide both.
And longer should be about maybe a paragraph or something like that. It could be longer, but I think paragraph is a good length. And yeah, and it doesn't matter when you submit. The only thing that matters is how much you're going to pay. If you submit early, it's less expensive. You submit at the final deadline, it's more expensive. But we don't make final decisions till after the deadline, and we're looking at things early. So it really doesn't matter as far as whether you'll get in or not.
Yep.
Okay. Laura Jean asks, have y'all given any thoughts to creating a remote aspect of the festival so that people could attend virtually even after things return to normal?
Yeah, I think I touched on that before and said that, yeah, absolutely. I think we're planning on doing that. We just launched our own platform. So there'll be definitely some virtual component of the festival. If not,
yeah, shout out to Eventive for the virtual platform.
Yes, we were very happy to just launch this thanks to Eventive, the Memphis company. And we have our first release on there now, the Traitor. So check out how well it runs.
It's amazing.
Yep. Mateo asks, as programmers, what's your opinion on shorts that are proof of concept for features? Do you need to know that, or is it better if you don't?
I don't know. See, it's one of those things, and Kayla, we ran into this a little bit last year that maybe you could add on to this. It just has to not feel like a proof of concept. And I know that it sounds like really vague. You're like, okay, thanks, Bridget. But like, you know it when you see a proof of concept, because it doesn't feel like a standalone short, or it feels like something's missing, or that maybe you've missed something. If you're gonna do that, I think it's totally fine, because it's like, that's part of your proof of concept strategy plan. I'm sure that you want to get that short out into the world, right? For fundraising opportunities, networking, when you go on to make the feature. And I am not above wanting to support that for any filmmaker, as long as it doesn't feel like that. I want it to be able to stand alone by itself, be a very solid short, and not leave anything hanging or feel like anything's missing for the audience, because the audience, even though they may not be able to verbalize or know that they're like, oh, that must be a proof of concept. Like my mom wouldn't necessarily know that, right? But she would walk away feeling like something wasn't quite right. Your audience will totally pick up on that. And hopefully maybe you figure that out within rounds of feedback or like audience testing with your proof of concept. But it's just really, really important that it's very strong when it stands alone. And it doesn't bother me if you tell me that it is or isn't. It doesn't hold any weight necessarily.
We do understand how important proof of concept shorts are in the industry, though, and we just launched a new grant program that Joseph can tell you more about, where we're specifically looking for. It's a grant for Memphis filmmakers specifically to make a proof of concept short, because we understand how important those are to getting a feature made, and that's something we want to see more of in Memphis.
Yep.
And I think I just want to add that I agree with everything that Bridget said about when you submit them. But in the year that I've been helping with shorts, I've really come to appreciate the short film and how great and amazing shorts can be. So I don't want to devalue the beauty of shorts, and that they're just as valuable as feature-length films. So also just take that into consideration.
If your proof of concept is a really solid short, if anything, it only gives what you can do for the feature even more weight. So just look at it that way.
Yeah, and we're encouraging that with this new proof of concept grant providing, it's important, almost more so that it stands alone as a good short film, regardless of its connection to a feature film. I mean, I think that what we don't want is to just turn that into, a commodity. Short film is just as important and valid as a feature.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very good question. The last couple questions are more about the fellowship and residency program.
Great.
Andre asks, for those filmmakers who are selected to the fellowship program, are additional resources offered to help with the production following submission of the finished screenplays?
I won't say that we offer specific services for production, but our goal, just like yours, is production. But so part of our mentorship is the last residency and fellowship, we connected them with an amazing producer who offered some really solid advice about next steps. And so we can continue with the guidance and the mentorships rather than specific infrastructure. But our goal, just like yours, is for production, and we'll continue to a lot of what the residency and fellowship is connecting you with people who can help get your film made. So so I would say that's sort of, it's not within the it's not really set up within the program, but it's there in the mentorship and connections that we make within the program.
Yeah, and also during the residency itself, we do a lot. We have weekly meetings with the screenwriters while they're working on their film, and we try to provide other resources during the process of writing to connect you to local crew and potential cast and other producers. So we're doing a lot during that time as well to help get you connected, so that hopefully, we can release you into the world and you're ready to go. So Kamel asks, will there be more screenwriting opportunities this year?
This is it, Kamel. You have till Sunday. This is it until next year. So this is the deadline to submit is this Sunday at midnight. And again, it doesn't have to be a finished script. We're looking at the first few pages plus a solid treatment. And then there'll be more steps beyond that. If you're selected, there'll be an interview, and then it finally goes to Boots Riley. So it doesn't start until the fall, and it'll be in selection process until we notify people in July or before July. So no, please get it in by Sunday. And if you have a solid idea, please just work on it. What we're looking for is your idea, and also your writing ability is demonstrated in your sample, but this doesn't need to be a completed script. So the residency and the fellowship are for completing the script and giving you the time and space and money to take some time off of work and just really concentrate. We realize that there are a lot of you who have great ideas and really should be making films and just need a little bit of time, space, and money to get your films made. So this program is for you. So reach out to us if you have any questions and submit by Sunday. Thank you.
I will say there won't be any more like screenwriting funding opportunities, but we do have, we're planning to continue all these shoot and splices every month. We'll have panels, in some capacity at the festival. So there may be some screenwriting type panels or shoot and splice events leading up to for the rest of the year. So just, stay tuned to our social media and our newsletters and our website to see what kind of shoot and splices we have coming up. So yeah.
That's a good point. And then we'll also have probably some panels and events during the festival about screenwriting. So there'll be more, but this is a really, it's one of our major programs. So we hope that we really look forward to discovering some new voices and having some people who haven't yet come to Memphis have a chance to spend some time there.
Cool. Well, I think that's it for our questions, unless anyone has anything else would like to raise their hand or enter anything.
No one raised their hand. No one wanted to engage.
No one wants to talk to us. That's weird.
Okay, well, if that is it for everyone, thank you all so much for joining us. Again, this was our first time doing a shoot and splice like this, so feel free to email me, joseph@indiememphis.com, or our info account, or whoever you know on our staff, and give us some tips or insights into what you think we could do better. Or if you have ideas for future virtual shoot and splices like this, please let us know. And thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Kayla. If you guys
One last thing, if you guys are interested again in screening committee, email programming@indiememphis.com. Okay.
It's a lot of fun. We'd love to have you join in our programming team that way. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Justin.
Thanks, Joseph, you're amazing. Thanks, Kayla.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.